3 spine-chilling true stories of haunting encounters while driving alone at night, revealed. Emily inhaled the familiar sense of grease and diner coffee clinging to her uniform as she slid into her car after yet another grueling shift. The suburbs night was a comforting blanket. She turned the radio up, the soft tunes easing her mind as she drove home through empty streets, lights flickering overhead like distant stars. But as she glanced in the rearview mirror, her heart sank. An old pickup truck, its headlights cutting through the darkness like a beast stalking its prey, had emerged, shadowing her every move. It was just fatigue, she told herself, shaking off the shivers that crawled up her spine. But the truck didn't just stay back, it crept closer, inching into the periphery of her vision with each turn she took. Memories of laughter with her children, quiet bedtime stories, and the warmth of their hugs filled her mind, but with them came an alarming sense of dread. A mother's love quickly morphed into primal fear. She could almost hear their innocent giggles, now a painful reminder of what she had to protect. Then the phone buzzed, a cruel interruption that sent her heart racing. An unknown number blinked on the screen. She answered, and a grating voice slithered through the line, sending icy tendrils skittering along her spine. "You shouldn't have taken this route, Emily," it hissed, the words twisted with malice. Panic clawed at her throat. The 4 walls of her car suddenly felt like a cage, her kids' voices echoing in her mind, pleading for their mama. Needing to break free from the truck's ominous presence, she slammed her foot on the gas and veered into a darkened road, landing on an abandoned industrial site. Rusted beams and broken concrete loomed around her like monsters in the night, all too familiar yet utterly alien now. She could almost feel the oppressive silence closing in, her breath hitching as she crept past remnants of a forgotten past. That was when she spotted him, the man everyone in town knew, the one who always showed up with a smile to help his neighbors. He lurked among the shadows, steel-eyed and predatory, poised like a hunter in his natural habitat. The realization sent a wave of nausea crashing through her. He hadn't just followed her, he had tracked her, patiently waiting in the dark corners of her life. Every comforting encounter with him now felt like a cruel betrayal. Just before she mustered the courage to confront him, fear had her want to bolt. But for her kids, for her peace, she had to stand her ground. Heart thundering, she willed her shaking hands to grip the wheel tighter, knowing she was walking a thin line between trust and doom. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow.
If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the air thickened with tension, she steeled her resolve, heart racing like a drum. What darkness lay behind those eyes she thought she understood? The fight for her life had only just begun, shadows swirling as she faced the man who wore a mask of familiarity. The question lingering in the air, would she step out of this nightmare, or become another ghost among the rusting relics? Emily's throat was dry, constricted, as if it understood the danger lurking just beyond her windshield. The man took a step forward, his footfalls echoing in the stillness, and she felt the weight of every heartbeat. Her mind raced with countless possibilities. What was he there for? Was there an unthinkable endgame to this dark encounter? She flicked the car's headlights back on, illuminating him further. The faint light struggled against the heavy darkness, and she saw his grin widen, a jagged smile that shattered the facade of familiarity he had worn like a mask so long. Her heart thundered, and an icy wave of terror clawed its way up her spine. No, she whispered to herself, the reality of the situation crashing over her like a tidal wave. This was no innocent neighbor, no friendly face from the community. This man was a predator, and she was the prey caught in his sights. Emily, he called her name, voice smooth and baiting, each syllable dripped with something sinister. I've been waiting for this for a long time. Her grip on the steering wheel tightened painfully, knuckles going white. She needed to think, to act. She scanned the surroundings. There was no way to back out, no roads left to escape. The only path led deeper into the abandoned site, where echoes of a different time flickered between the remnants. Did he mean to corner her here? With adrenaline racing through her veins, she thought of her kids, their laughter echoing in her mind. She couldn't let him have her, not now. In a desperate move, she surged the engine forward, her tires screeching against the cracked pavement. The impulse to escape overwhelmed every ounce of rational thought. The rusty shell of the industrial site loomed dangerously ahead, casting a foreboding shadow, but she had to take that risk. He darted out of the way, but not before she caught a glimpse of something glimmering in his hand. Was that a knife? Panic tore through her heart, and she slammed her foot down on the gas. The vehicle lunged forward, but the darkness of the abandoned site was a maze, making her feel trapped like a rat. Did she miscalculate? Would she end up driving right into his trap?
Glancing into the rearview mirror, the glow from the pickup was fading, but dread still gnawed at her. Had he given up just because she sped away? The shadows danced against the dim light, as if orchestrating a ballet of her fears, every corner potentially concealing him. "Don't look back," she hissed at herself, but the urge clawed at her. What if he was following her again? Should she call for help? Her phone lay lifeless in the passenger seat. She cursed under her breath, fingers trembling as she reached for it. Suddenly, a loud bang resonated, shaking her from her frantic thoughts. The car jolted as a tire blew, and the vehicle began to swerve dangerously. She fought for control as fear surged anew. A second bang echoed, clearer this time, and only then did she recognize the unmistakable sound of gunfire. Her breath hitched as she fought the urge to scream. Without another moment to lose, she yanked the wheel hard, steering toward a narrow exit ahead. Her eyes shot back to the rearview mirror. There he stood at the entrance, gun still smoking, eyes blaring with rage. Would she escape, or would the shadows claim her, wrapping around her life like a shroud? The path forward grew dimmer, the darkness closing in. Emily pressed the gas pedal to the floor, heart racing, as she prepared for the unknown ahead. Then the headlights caught something, a figure scurrying into the night. Who was it? And why did it look so familiar? Emily's heart stumbled in her chest as the headlights flickered over the fleeting figure. The blurry outline vanished into blackness, but recognition sliced through her panic. It couldn't be. Was it really him? She swerved to focus on the spot now swallowed by shadows. Was it a trick of her mind? The stress, the danger, could they be warping her perception? The memories of laughter and warmth suddenly twisted into something threatening, making her second-guess every friendly face from her past. The car roared forward through the abandoned complex, her thoughts running wild. She gripped the wheel, knuckles white, as the engine revved in desperate defiance. Was that figure a ghost of her past, or merely a fragment of her escalating fear? "Stay focused, Emily," she scolded herself, but the echoes of her kids' giggles hung in the air, taunting her. How had she ended up in this mental breakdown on a deserted road? The eerie silence around her pressed in, filling her with dread. It didn't take long before she felt the cold breath of unease creeping back. The echoes of footfalls from the man earlier were still bouncing in her ears, a predatory reminder of her potential doom. She could hear the rasp of her breath, the unsettling rhythm matching the erratic tempo of her racing heart. Clutching the steering wheel like a lifeline, she made a split decision. She veered left, desperate to find the escape route she needed, but the path twisted upon itself like a serpent, only leading her into deeper shadows.
Her headlights cut through the darkness, revealing graffiti-covered walls that loomed like silent witnesses, marking the decay of the place. And then there it was again, a glimpse of movement. This time, it wasn't her imagination. A figure darted out from behind a crumbling pillar, and she sucked in air, feeling the world close in. Emily's heart pounded out a warning as terror ripped through her. It was him. But what did he want? Her mind spiraled with the questions that poured in. Had he been stalking her this whole time? Or was he simply drawn to the same haunting memories and secrets hidden within these walls? Panic gripped her when she saw something flash under the faint light, something metallic catching the glow. Not a knife. It was a keychain. In a sick twist of fate, it was their old family keychain, one she thought lost ages ago. "What the hell?" Emily whispered, confusion battling with terror. The memories hit her like a wave, her kids exploring the old industrial site, laughter echoing off the rusted walls. Innocent adventures turned dark. The figure melted into the shadows again, and Emily's resolve quaked. "This isn't real," she muttered, breathless. Fear clawed at her throat as she fought to keep her composure. Was this a nightmare she couldn't wake up from? Or was she losing her grip on reality? With a renewed surge of adrenaline, Emily turned sharply, determined not to let fear win. She needed to reach the exit, to safety. One last effort pushed her forward. The road ahead seemed to warp, bending around her in agonizing slow motion, isolating her from reality. Then came the unmistakable echo of a voice, hoarse and chilling, rising above the sound of her heartbeat and the engine. "Emily, you won't leave me again." She froze. Each word slithered into her mind, eroding her sanity with its venomous familiarity. It echoed like an unwelcome ghost, sending a fresh wave of terror crashing over her. Who are you?" she gasped,
exhaustion overtaking her resolve. But the only reply was silence, thick with foreboding. Emily pressed forward, fear coursing through her veins like ice. What lay ahead? Was it an escape or a plunge deeper into the darkness? The shadows tangled around her, hinting at truths yet untold. And as she turned the corner, a flickering neon sign caught her eye, illuminating a path then twisted into an unknown terror. What awaited her on the other side? Would she uncover not just her past, but the horror that had been waiting? The sign flickered erratically, casting sharp shadows that danced like specters on the walls. Emily's instincts screamed at her to turn back, but curiosity and dread pushed her onward. What was waiting behind the veil of darkness? Was it merely the phantom of her past, or something far more sinister? Her breath quickened as she followed the dimly lit path, the air thickening with anticipation. Each step sounded like thunder in this desolate place.
She clenched her fists, feeling the familiar keychain in her pocket. It weighed heavy, a tangible reminder of her children and the innocence stolen from her life. Suddenly, an overwhelming chill washed over her, raising the hairs on her arms. The neon light flickered again, and she squinted into the abyss beyond. The corridor stretched deeper, pulling her into its grip. "I have to get out of here," she muttered, but her feet felt glued to the ground. And then she heard it, a soft rustling, like dry leaves skittering across asphalt. But this sound was more deliberate, almost purposeful. Her stomach dropped as the noise drew closer, a sinister whisper in the growing dark. "Emily, I can still protect you." Panic surged like a hot flame, igniting her body to move. She turned sharply, her pulse hammering louder than any heartbeat should. It was him. The shadow flickered at the end of the corridor. She caught just a glimpse of a face made of nightmares. A faint whispering laugh echoed around her, chilling her to the core. "Why won't you just come home?" the voice taunted, soft and deceptively inviting. It sent a rush of icy dread flooding through her veins. She didn't want to listen. She didn't want to understand. Clenching her fists tighter, she charged forward. The light was fading, but she could almost see the exit at the end of the hall, just a little further. Hope sparked in her as she sprinted toward it. "Just keep going, Emily." The laughter intensified, echoing like a personal symphony of terror as she dashed onwards. But the shadow seemed angry now, reaching out with grasping fingers as she ran. "Emily, come back. I won't let you go. Not again." She stumbled, the weight of his words pressing down on her chest like a vice. She repeated her children's names in her mind, a whispered chant to drown out the darkness. They were her light, her reason to kick against this terrifying tide. The exit loomed closer, a mere heartbeat away. She reached for it, hands outstretched, desperation fueling her every motion. And then, with a bone-jarring impact, she crashed against the reinforced door, pain shooting through her body as the sound of her efforts echoed like a death knell. But the door wouldn't budge. "Let me out," she screamed, pounding on the metal with her fists, but her voice simply echoed back mockingly. Was she truly trapped here? Was that her fate, lost among these shadows, forever haunted by the echoes of a man she once loved? She turned, and the figure was there again, now closer, eyes glinting in the shadows. He wore a smile that was both familiar and unsettling. "You never could run from me, Emily." The world spun around her, the corridor closing in as she caught her breath, feeling the weight of overwhelming dread settle in her gut. Every instinct told her he wasn't just a lost father or a loving husband, but something far worse. "Why are you doing this?" she pleaded, tears stinging her eyes. He stepped closer, his form shifting in and out of the light. "Because you left me first, and that's something I can never forgive." More rustling surrounded her, footsteps lingering on unseen paths. Shadows flared, shifting and converging, urging her to remember the darkness that had invaded her life long before this night. The exit was right in front of her, tantalizingly close. And yet, as she struggled to find her voice, the question loomed. What truth had she buried deep inside? Would fighting the past finally set her free?
With a final glance at the encroaching figure, she bit down hard on her fear. The night was far from over, and the horrors of her past were just beginning to unfold. "Emily," his voice slithered closer, "you still have a choice. You can join me forever." What would she choose? How far would she go to escape the demons of her past? The sign above the exit flickered one last time before plunging into darkness. Time slowed as the dark swallowed Emily whole. She stood frozen, her heart racing, while shadows lunged eagerly at her, festering fears clawing their way back to the surface. There was no escape from this nightmare. The walls pulsed with a heavy heartbeat, echoing the dread building inside her chest. With every breath she took, it became loathsomely clear. She wasn't alone. The laughter lingered like the stench of decay, invading her senses. "Emily," his voice spiraled into her mind, gnawing at her sanity. "Why the hesitation? Just embrace it." Her hands trembled as she pressed against the unyielding door, the cold metal biting into her palms. She could hear Morris, the father of her children, whispering insidiously through the cracks. It was uncanny how his tone shifted from sweet to malevolent within seconds. "Let me out!" she shouted again, desperation curling around her words. The walls seemed to recoil as though in response to her plea. The laughter erupted behind her, twisting her stomach. "You don't want to leave. You didn't want to leave me then." Emily spun back around, her breaths shallow and frantic. She forced herself to face him. "You're not him anymore. And yet here I am, always here," Morris taunted, grinning wider, revealing teeth too sharp and too angry. Shadows wrapped around his figure, chaining him to this tortured existence. Every fiber in her being screamed at her to run, to break free from the horrors of her mind. But the door held fast, a mocking prison. Morris took a step closer, the space between them filled with darkness so thick it suffocated her. "What do you want?" she croaked, the question tumbling from her lips like a child lost in the woods. "To bring you home." The laughter died down, leaving a heavy silence, broken only by her rapid heartbeat. "Don't you want to know what really happened?" With those words, an icy sensation sliced through her, wrapping around her heart.
Images flooded her head, her children's laughter, their faces full of light quickly obscured by shadows. "No," she yelled, clutching her head as the memories slammed into her like icy waves. "I want the truth." "Ah, but truth can be ugly," he whispered, voice dripping with venom, "just like the world you abandoned." Suddenly, the corridor widened, pulling back the veil of darkness for a split second, a flicker of freedom. She saw glimpses of warm light beyond the door. Blinded by hope, she lunged again, throwing her entire weight against it one last time, and the door finally shuddered. "Don't you dare!" Morris's voice shrieked as she fought against the shadowy tide. With a violent grunt, the door swung ajar, letting in a blast of swirling light that pierced the darkness like a spear. Emily fell through, landing on her hands and knees in an unfamiliar, harshly lit room. But the comfort was fleeting. She still felt the cold breath of Morris on her neck. "You can't run from what's inside you," he hissed, now echoing around her, bouncing off walls that seemed to close in. The room had no escape, only mirrors reflecting her panicked face, each showing strange shadows lurking just behind her. But what terrified her most was the voice again. This time it was her children whispering, luring her deeper into the darkness. "Mommy, come play." "Stop!" she screamed, desperation flooding her, but the shadows were relentless, creeping with velvet precision, whispering sweet nothings that twisted her heart. She turned back, forging a path through the eerie room of reflections, chasing after something she couldn't pinpoint. What were they trying to tell her? The air thickened with tension, drawing her closer to their haunting echoes as the truth clawed at her mind. For a moment, she felt a flicker of hope, a thread of connection anchoring her. But was it genuine or simply another trap, another lie spun by the dark? "Emily," the shadows coiled closer. "You're not alone anymore. Join us."
Heart racing, she fought against the pull of the unknown as she clawed for the last remnants of her truth. In her heart, she sensed the answer, the truth buried deep within the shadows. Her children were trapped in the darkness, and so was she. Facing the flickering mirrors, she knew she had to make her choice before the darkness swallowed her whole. And suddenly, the lights dimmed, the whispers hushed, leaving her right at the crossroads of terror and revelation. What would the shadows reveal next? Could she ever escape the darkness that was now a part of her? The mirrors warped around her, the glass reflected distorted images of despair. Emily felt her heart thunder in her chest, each beat echoing like a countdown into madness. She flicked her gaze from one reflection to another, desperately searching for a hint of her children, for any sign that she could reach them. "Mommy," they called again, their voices melding with the shadows.
A sickening sense of familiarity wrapped around her, each syllable threading through her like a weight. The shadows pulsed in time with her racing heart, an ominous beat that threatened to draw her in. "No!" Emily screamed, refusing to succumb. She had to remember, she had to fight. But the shadows grew thicker, crawling over her skin like icy tendrils, whispering promises of unity and warmth. "You don't need to fight anymore, Emily. Just let go." Her knuckles turned white as she gripped the edge of the closest mirror, eyes wide with terror, searching deeper into the glimmering surface. Images flashed, scenes of laughter in a sunlit park, her children's faces glowing with life. Yet interspersed were glimpses of darker moments, laughter replaced with screams, joy stripped bare by haunting shadows. "Please," she shouted out, desperation flooding her voice. "Where are my kids?" "You abandoned them," Morris echoed, his voice slithering through the air. "Why would they want you?" The darkness roared in response, swirling closer, its breath hot against her skin. Panic surged in her veins as she stumbled backward. Light flickered, casting horrifying shapes across the walls. Twisted figures with faces obscured. Shadows of once familiar love turned to grotesque caricatures. "Run, Emily, run to us." They were waiting. The shadows promised her everything, acceptance, a reunion nestled in the darkness. But something in her gut twisted painfully. She knew deep down it was not love calling out to her. It was something far more sinister. Suddenly, the mirrors cracked. A sharp sound sliced through the air, a sickening echo that sent shards flying like glassy knives. Emily stumbled, pain shooting through her hand where a shard grazed her palm, but she didn't care. The blood trickled like courage seeping into her bones. As shards fell to the floor, the reflection shattered, revealing glimpses of another reality. Beyond the broken glass, she could see her children, small figures trapped in a void, their pleas muffled, encased within the very darkness she battled. "Mommy!" they cried, faces streaked with desperation. Pure terror needed her to act. "No!" she screamed, clenching her fists. "I'm coming! I won't abandon you!" The dark twisted in fury, the shadows reeling back, but she felt their force countered by defiance. Eyes wide with determination, she surged forward. The pain in her hand was forgotten as she smashed the remaining mirrors, each blow sending a shiver through the very fabric of the room. It was then she saw it, an odd light, a flicker beneath the cracked reflections, pulsing like the heartbeat of the universe. Was it a way out, or merely another trap set by the darkness? "Leave her, leave her," Morris's voice howled, venom dripping from each syllable. But Emily could feel their pull weakening. Drawing upon the last reserves of her strength, she lunged for the glimmering light, the hope cutting through her like a razor. If it meant saving her children, she'd claw her way through hell. As her fingers grazed the surface of the light, the room erupted into a cacophony of chaos. Screams erupted, shadows clashed, and for an infuriating moment, everything froze. Emily's heart pounded furiously as she felt the warmth consume her, and just before it pulled her in, it all went dark again. An empty echo filled the void. Was she back in the corridor? Had she truly escaped? Or was she now lost in a deeper layer of darkness, one where even shadows feared to tread? What would she encounter next? Emily blinked, her surroundings slowly sharpening into focus. She dropped to her knees, gasping. The air felt thick and suffocating, like a fog rolling in off the ocean. She was in a narrow hallway, dimly lit by flickering overhead lights. The smell of dampness and decay clawed at her senses. Panic screamed in her head.
Is anyone there? Her voice trembled, fighting through the oppressive silence. No answer. Only echoes of her words returned, fading into the corners. Tentatively, she pushed herself upright, swaying a bit as dizziness washed over her. Where were the mirrors? Where were her children? The darkness had swallowed them whole, but the pull remained, an omnipresent weight in her chest. She took a step forward, and the floor creaked beneath her. Shadows darted across the walls, teasing her vision. She scanned the hallway, hoping for a sign, anything that would lead her to her kids. "Guys, just give me a sign." But instead, she heard it, soft giggles echoing from the end of the corridor. It was low, distorted, but the cadence, it was unmistakable. Her heart lurched. Sophie? Max? She almost cried out their names, but caught herself. What if the darkness was leading her like before? Her mind raced. This isn't real, she told herself. It's not them. Yet the giggles continued, playful notes twirling in the air like leaves caught in a breeze. Every step she took toward the sound felt like a step deeper into the abyss. The hallway stretched endlessly, the flickering lights nearly giving way to total darkness at points. Each heartbeat echoed loudly in her ears, drowning out any rational thought. Then she spotted something glimmering at the far end, a door, half open, light spilling out like a beacon in the gloom. The laughter grew louder. "Mommy!" Their voices entwined like ribbons in the wind, drawing her closer. She rushed forward, desperation overriding her instinct to be cautious. Just as she reached the doorframe, a violent gust of wind slammed the door shut, the sound like a gunshot in the silence. Emily jumped back, heart racing, fists clenching in fury. "Stop playing games! Let me see them!" But the door remained closed, mocking her with the faintest traces of laughter lingering in the air. As she pressed against the wood, she felt a pulse beneath her fingers, beating like a heart, rhythmic, insistent. Sweat trickled down her neck. This wasn't right.
Suddenly, the laughter turned into shrill screams. The air shifted, charged with anger and despair. Her heart sank. "Mommy!" The screams mingled with a horrible cracking sound. The walls trembled as something surged from the darkness, a shadowy form coiling around the frame like a predator poised to strike. "No!" she shouted, stumbling backward. The suffocating shadows twisted, rolling like smoke, threatening to engulf her whole. She couldn't breathe. She had to get away from this place, this nightmare. In a blind panic, Emily turned to run, her feet pounding against the floor. The laughter faded, replaced by a guttural growl, a sound so raw it felt like it was tearing through her soul. Every inch of her screamed to keep moving, but her legs felt like lead. "Find them!" she urged herself, pushing against the growing darkness that brewed behind her. Just as she reached the curve of the hallway, the lights above flickered dangerously. One by one they died, plunging her into an expanding darkness. Heart racing, she spun around, her breath ragged. The scuttling sounds came from behind, brushing against the walls, drawing nearer. She clutched her throat, trying to hold back the burst of fear. What was coming for her? The hallway's end loomed, an expanse of pure blackness. With back pressed firmly against the cold wall, she turned her head, desperate for another light, a direction, anything. And that's when she saw it. Shapes creeping out of the shadows, dark outlines against the subduing light. "Mommy, we missed you." The whisper slithered through her, curling around her fears, dragging her toward the inevitable. What were they? What did they really want? There was no turning back now. Was this the reunion she sought, or the beginning of something far worse? Emily's heart raced as the shapes advanced, the whispers wrapping around her like a frigid fog. She squinted into the dark, desperately trying to make sense of the forms. Shadows morphed into recognizable silhouettes. Sophie and Max. "Mommy!" Their voices were sweet, yet they held an uncanny edge. Her mind screamed at her to run, but her body was frozen in place. They appeared as they had when she last saw them, small and innocent. But there was something off, a liminal space where love twisted painfully into fear. "Is it really you?" she croaked, her throat dry as she took a tentative step forward. A deep pull urged her, an instinctive yearning to embrace them. But as she stepped closer, their faces descended into shadows, their eyes reflecting dark hollows. They giggled again, but the giggle was now laden with something sinister, a mocking tone that coerced her to join them in madness. "Mommy, come play with us." "No," Emily shouted, shaking her head to block the sound. She backed away slowly,
heart pounding as anxiety clawed at her. The hallway felt alive, the walls closing in, pulsating like a throbbing wound.
The darkness breathed deeply, exhaling despair like a predator closing in on its prey. She turned on her heel and bolted. Her footsteps echoed in the confined space, the scuttling sounds rising behind her like a sinister drum. The air grew colder, and her breath emerged in rapid white puffs, mixing with the despair that wrapped around her. "Find them! You have to find them!" she urged herself, tears blurring her vision. A flicker of hope shot through her heart. What if they were just lost? What if they needed her? Another shriek rang out, louder this time, raw and haunting. She stumbled over her own feet, fear surging through her. The flickering lights became puffs of blackness, snuffing out the last remnants of hope. In her absurd degree of desperation, she clutched on to the memory of her children's laughter. The thought was both a balm and a dagger. Then a shocking silence enveloped her, suffocating and terrifying. She halted, dumbfounded in the sudden stillness. The scuttling had ceased, replaced by a dreadful, heavy quiet that pulled on her consciousness. "Mommy," a voice whispered, so soft she almost didn't catch it. "Max," she croaked, feelings of dread coiling in her gut. The breath faded, leaving her feelings stripped of all defenses. In that silence, she felt their shapes slipping back into the shadows, almost retreating, beckoning from afar. She could almost envision them, twisted into something bordering between her children and something unrecognizable. Suddenly, the ground beneath her feet trembled. Cracks snaked along the hallway floor, pulsing like a heartbeat, widening to a yawning abyss. The walls seemed to ripple, as if alive with dark fury. Emily was seized with the unreality of her surroundings. This wasn't a place of refuge, but a trap designed to snare lost souls. "Mommy, help us," they cried once more, the plea warping into an echoing scream that penetrated her heart. "No, no," she screamed back. "Where are you?" A bitter wind whirled through the corridor, yanking at her hair and tearing at her clothes. The shadows began to crawl toward her, swirling faster, tightening, an avalanche of darkness ready to pull her in. She turned again to flee, but every direction felt treacherous, the light all but extinguished. Somehow she found the door, yanking it open with a desperate energy she didn't know she had. A surge of adrenaline fueled her as she stumbled through the doorframe into an indeterminate space beyond, and then silence folded over her. But where were her children? In that paralyzing quiet, she felt another presence lurking behind her, breathless and heavy, like a hunter in hiding. What had her children become? What was waiting just beyond the shadows? Emily's heart hammered wildly as she turned around to face the darkness behind her. Whatever was there, it was close, standing just out of sight. She felt the temperature drop, her breath coming in sharp, visible puffs. The quiet bled into her ears, deafening as she strained to listen for a sound. Any sound. "Mommy," the voice came again, but this time it was accompanied by a crackle of static, like a broken radio transmission. It warped through the air, bouncing against her skull, and she felt her sanity teetering. "Stay away from me," she yelled, her voice shaking. The shadows shifted again, swaying like branches in a storm. She was not alone. Something was watching her. Then came a thud, a heavy sound, like a body collapsing to the ground, just beyond the threadbare door she had hastily thrown open. Panic surged within her, electrifying her limbs. She had to keep moving. In the gut of the room she found herself in, only the faintest sliver of light pooled on the floor, illuminating a thick layer of dust and despair. She stumbled forward, her hands outstretched. Her fingers brushed against a cold, slick surface. Glass. Shards crunched beneath her feet. Through the jagged pieces, she glimpsed reflections of twisted faces, hers combined with murky images of Sophie and Max, their delicate features warped, their eyes too dark, too hungry. "No, no, no." Emily staggered back, her mind racing. They were trapped, twisted into something monstrous by the same shadows that loomed oppressive around her. If she could just reach them, if she could just hold their hands again. But how? Her thoughts raced as she turned her gaze back to the door. Shadows crept and swirled, crawling back towards her like smoke feeding on grief. The mocking laughter echoed once again. They were playing a game, and she was the prize. Suddenly, there was a flicker in the air, and the lights overhead blazed to life, blinding her momentarily. Her heart soared, hope igniting a fleeting spark, until she noticed the shapes that moved just beyond the edges of the brightness. Long, lingering silhouettes that were twisting, stretching unnaturally, beckoning her closer, even as they threatened to consume her. "Mommy, come play," they sang, their voices now a haunting chorus, entwined with the echoes of her deepest fears. A horrid chill twisted in her stomach, paralyzing her. Emily pressed her back against the doorframe, her breath coming in quick gasps. She had the fragile flicker of awareness, a sense of reality that urged her to continue. She had to find a way out. She ducked down, her knees shaking as she crawled toward the flickering light, avoiding the grasping shadows. Every inch crawled with terror, her mind screaming warnings. The voices tried to drown her in despair, but she pressed on, hand over hand. Suddenly, she spotted a glimmer at the far end of the room, a window just beneath the darkness. With renewed determination, she surged toward it. The air felt charged, every shuffle echoing back with malignant laughter, and the figures behind her loomed closer, shadows stretching toward her with outstretched fingers. Just as she reached the window, a freezing hand clutched her ankle.
She gasped, looking down to see a slick, shadowy form rising up, its face merging into grotesqueness. "Stay," it hissed, the word thrumming through the very air, wrapping around her heart like a chain. With a shudder, she pulled free and smashed her body against the window, desperate to escape the encroaching darkness. The glass shattered upon impact, and as it splintered, a burst of light flooded the room. And then silence fell again, thick and oppressive. Emily clambered through the broken frame, tumbling out into the night air. But as she looked around, even the sky felt wrong, clouds swirling wildly, hiding the moon. Where were her children? Desperation clawed at her throat as she turned back toward the house. Lights flickered behind darkened windows, but now the voices grew louder, more coherent, filled with frantic sobs that shattered her composure. "Help us, Mommy," they cried again, their wails twisting through the night like a siren. With dread coursing through her veins, she grasped the inconceivable truth. She might have escaped the house, but her children were still trapped in a nightmare. Did she have the strength to rescue them? As she took a hesitant step back toward the door, the ground beneath her trembled again, threatening to swallow her whole. Would she dare enter the darkness again? Emily's heart raced as she stood before the doorway, torn between fear and determination. The world around her felt like a living nightmare, shadows creeping ominously at the edges of her vision. She thought of Sophie and Max, their innocent faces haunting her thoughts. The cries for help echoed relentlessly in her ears, pulling her back to the darkness she had fled. "No," she shouted, shaking her head as if the movement could shake off the dread. "I won't let you take them." It was a vow, a promise laced with desperation. Taking a deep breath, she pushed through the door, plunging back into the suffocating dark. Each step felt heavy, as if the floor was trying to anchor her in place. She scanned the familiar hallway, but it was warped. The walls closed in, flickering with sinister shadows that writhed expectantly. "Mommy, help!" The voices were stronger now, sharper like knives. Each cry sliced through her resolve, tugging her deeper into the choking grip of fear. She felt their pain as a visceral ache in her chest. "Where are you?" she gasped, her voice shaking. She charged forward, adrenaline pushing her through the oppressive gloom. The flickering light overhead did its best to illuminate her path, shaking with uncertainty, as if it too felt the darkness closing in. Emily barreled through the hallways, driven by the haunting sounds of her children and the growing urgency in her heart. "I'm coming," she yelled into the shadows, searching every corner, her feet pounding against the floor like war drums. Memory after memory flashed in her mind, laughter and playtimes blending with nightmares, whispering to her that time was running out. And then she found it, the room where the voices echoed with pure anguish. She pushed the door open with a grim determination, bracing for the chaos inside. What met her was the same twisted reflection of her past. Shadows flared and danced across the walls, revealing glimpses of Sophie and Max behind those dark, warped distortions. Their faces appeared, etched with fear, shadows pressing around them like chains, pulling them into the void. "Mommy!" they screamed, a cacophony of voices that twisted into an unsettling symphony. "Don't worry, I'm here!" Emily cried, scrambling forward. She fought against the pulling darkness, reaching for her children, stretching her arm as dread wormed its way through her mind. Each step felt monumental, the air thick with despair and swirling shadows.
Suddenly, the darkness thickened, bursting into swirling tendrils that reached out like claws. "You can't save them." Morris's voice broke through the fray, filled with twisted fondness. "They are mine now, Emily. Come join us and see." "Shut up!" she screamed, slashing through the air with her hand, as if that would sever the ties they had on her children. "Leave them alone!" Just then, the room exploded into chaos. Light flickered, shadows clashed violently, and Emily felt a pressing weight on her chest, a suffocating mixture of fear and determination pushing her onward, like a wave crashing through an immovable wall. "No more hiding," she roared, gathering every ounce of strength. Reaching for the children's hands again, she summoned every ounce of love, her voice fierce and full of resolve. "You are my light. I'll never leave you." With a final surge of courage, she lunged forward, grabbing hold of their trembling hands. As soon as their fingers intertwined, an electric warmth pulsed through her, igniting a furious fire inside her heart. The shadows recoiled, howling in agony, as Emily pulled her children close, wrapping them in a protective embrace. The world shook violently, light piercing through the darkness, as the power of their bond fractured the shadows. Ribbons of shadow loosened, slipping through the cracks like grains of sand. "I love you," she whispered fiercely, realization crashing over her like a tidal wave. "And nothing can separate us." In an explosive flash, the darkness erupted. It warped and twisted, a violent tempest unleashed. Emily felt herself being pulled from the abyss, dragging her children alongside her. Amidst the raging storm, everything flashed, raw and blazing, filled with colors she thought only existed in dreams. Then, silence fell. Emily's eyes opened, blinking into the soft light of a bright room. She was on the floor of her home, the familiar smell of coffee and pancakes enveloping her. She could hear laughter, a sweet, innocent sound drifting in from the kitchen. "Sophie, Max."
She called, scrambling to her feet, heart pounding. She rushed toward the voices like a moth drawn to a flame. The door swung open, revealing her children, alive and unwavering, busy in the kitchen. "Mommy, can you help us make pancakes?" they chimed in unison, flashing bright smiles that melted the remnants of darkness lingering in her heart. Emily sank to her knees, enveloping them in her arms, inhaling their sweet presence, tears of joy flooding her eyes. "I thought I lost you," she gasped, choked with relief. "Never," Max declared, throwing his little arms around her neck. "We're always with you." As they embraced, the faint echo of darkness began to fade, drawing further away, like a nightmare retreating into the night. The sun filtered through the window, warm and comforting, wrapping around them like a protective blanket. Emily smiled through her tears, the warmth of love and light radiating through her heart. The shadows might linger on the outskirts, but now she knew that she had the strength to keep them at bay. "Let's make pancakes together for all of us," she said, ruffling their hair as laughter filled the room. And as they gathered ingredients and began anew, there was no darkness that could ever hold them captive again. Life unfolded, brighter than before. The end. But every true story ends with the promise of more to come. Thank you for joining Emily on this harrowing journey. If you want to dive into more hair-raising tales and heart-pumping adventures, you need to subscribe now. Smash that like button for more crazy content. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think happened next? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support fuels these stories, and I appreciate every single one of you.